Hi everyone, this is Amy Owen of Desert Hives, and the purpose of this video is to demonstrate how to do a mite test using the alcohol wash method, and also talk about why mite testing is important. This is the back of my Toyota 4Runner, and you can see some of the mite testing supplies here. You're going to need to get them all together before you start sampling your hives. So you will need some isopropyl alcohol or Dawn dish soap or windshield wiper fluid. People use different things to wash the mites off the bees. I prefer to use isopropyl alcohol just because it kills the bees faster, and I feel, a lot better about that. And you will also need a jar with 1/8 inch hardware cloth to cover the lid at the top. I got mine from Granger, the hardware store. It's kind of like that industrial hardware store, and you can just use wire clippers to cut off the size you need to cover the top. And you'll also need a clear or white bowl to pour the bees into after they've been washed. And I like to make kind of like a basket with that 8-inch or 1/8 inch cloth, so that I can rinse them around in the bowl and pour more alcohol over them to make sure I get all the mites. So you saw the back of my car, and now you can see me in one of the apiaries I manage out near Santa Fe. And the first step to mite testing is always finding your queen. And so unfortunately that can sometimes take a while, especially if your colonies are pretty big like this one. But while you're watching me look for the queen, we'll just go ahead and talk about why mite testing is important, and when to test and how often. So let's see. And obviously you're looking for the queen because you do not want to get your queen in your alcohol wash, right? And mite testing is really important. It's really the only way to have a sure answer as to what's going on in your hive. For example, if you see brood that isn't nice and solid and is kind of patchy, it could be a number of things. It could be part of parasitic mite syndrome, where the bees are pulling out infected larvae because they know they can detect the mites on the larvae, so they're pulling them out. And so yeah, the brood will look spotty, but you're not going to know that unless you do a mite test. And so it kind of helps you evaluate, is my queen healthy? Is she well mated? Or is it maybe something in the environment? Do the bees not have enough nectar and pollen to raise their brood? So doing a mite test can really help you figure out why your brood might be spotty. And yeah, mites are terrible. Mites carry all kinds of diseases to your hive. So if you do have an infestation that's above threshold, it's really going to harm your bees because they carry deformed wing virus, all sorts of nasty stuff. So you're going to want to know how many mites you have. And also, if you have a larger apiary and you want to do splits or give away splits or graft queens, you don't want to graft queens or pull splits from hives that continually have high mite loads, because that's telling you that those genetics in that hive or that colony are not great, and they're not very good at dealing with the mites. Okay, so here in this video, I found the queen. I kind of pointed her out. I put her back in the hive, and then I grabbed the next bar with open and closed brood. And then you can see me running the jar down the top bar there to get the bees in. And then I cover it with that 1/8 inch hardware cloth. And you're going to want to make sure you find a bar of brood that's about half capped and half open. And that's because the nurse bees are on that frame or that bar. And they're the ones that are more likely to have mites on them, and so you're going to get a more accurate count. And you can see in that last video, I poured the alcohol through that screen to dispatch those bees. And then I replaced it with the solid lid that you can see right now. And then you're going to want to shake those bees and agitate it for at least a minute to try to get all of the mites off. It's also a really good time to stretch your back. But yeah, so you're going to just keep shaking it and try to wash all those mites off the bees. And so while I'm doing that, I'll just talk about, you know, when to start testing. So as soon as the bees start to build up in the spring, you want to start doing your first mite test. So right now, and I actually did this mite test maybe a week ago at the most. But yeah, you're going to want to see how many mites you have at the beginning of the season, so you can treat early and really get ahead of the game. And so you can see I pour them out of the jar and into that little tray I made with the hardware cloth, and kind of shake them around in the alcohol, rinse them more with alcohol on top to get any mites off. Yeah, and so I kind of dip it back in the alcohol. I think I do that in this video. There we go. And wash them back and forth. I think I probably should have had a little more alcohol in the dish just to wash them a little better. But yeah, as long as you're pouring some alcohol over the top and they're really agitated and you're making sure you get as many as you can, you should get a pretty accurate count. And then I just carry paper towels for cleanup, and then I like to put it under my dish so I can see the mites easily. And thankfully in this count I only had 1 mite per 300 bees. And so I just realized I never told you guys, you want to get half a cup of bees in that jar, which is about 300 bees, and you get kind of good at eyeballing it. And so, but you can draw a line on your jar before you get your sample just to help out. And I think you could see in that video I showed that, you know, I kind of shake the bees as they're falling in so that they fall to the bottom and I can see how many I have. And then, yeah, so you're going to want 300 bees for your sample. And here I'm treating with Formic because this hive had 10 mites per 300 bees, which was above threshold. The Honeybee Health Coalition recommends that in the spring during this buildup, if your mite level is above 2%, you're going to want to go ahead and treat. And so I treated this colony with Formic Pro, and you can see I put one of the pads to one side of that box and one on the other, and that was the only brood box. So you're going to want to put those pads on top of the brood box to treat with Formic Pro. And always wear gloves, always wear a mask. The acid is pretty strong, so you want to be careful. And you can even wear safety goggles. I know with the old Max strips it was a lot more potent, but with the Formic Pro it's a lot, it wicks away more slowly, and so it's not as strong of a smell, thankfully. But yeah, so in your count, I'll go back to that, of 300 bees. So if you had 10 mites in your sample, you're going to divide that number by 3 to get your percentage. Hi everyone, so there's some things I wasn't able to mention during the video just because it was so fast, and I didn't realize I wouldn't even have enough time to cover everything. So just a few quick things. Whenever I was taking the frame of bees or the bar of bees and running the jar down the side so that the bees fell in, another thing you can do if you're not comfortable with that is you can shake the bees into a big bucket from the frame or carefully from the top bar, and then you can get your half-cup measuring cup and scoop half a cup of bees out and then put it in your jar quickly. So that's just another option for getting your sample. And then some other things I overlooked or couldn't talk about quickly enough is that just about mites themselves, I didn't mention much about them at all. They're a parasite. The bee's the host, and in nature it's the biggest parasite to host ratio out there. So it'd be like a cat just clawing onto my back. So these poor bees, I mean, they're dealing with quite a bit of stress when they have varroa mites. And so, yeah, it's kind of helpful to picture just how big these parasites are to the bees. And they're parasitic in that they feed on the bees' fat bodies. And a bee's fat body contains their immune system, and it also, bees with larger fat bodies are what help get a colony through winter. So if you've had a season of varroa mites feeding on your bees' fat bodies, they are likely to have some diseases that are carried by the mites, like I said, deformed wing virus being one of them. And their fat bodies are going to be very depleted, and it's unlikely that they're going to survive winter. So yeah, it's super important to keep mite loads low. And definitely, I was also mentioning some times for mite testing, and I said start in the spring, and you'll want to test at least 4 times a season. Just periodically. Always retest after treatment so that you know if it was effective or not. And it's really good to know what your mite load is going into winter. And give yourself enough time to treat the bees before you can't get into the hive anymore before winter. So yeah, and there was something else I wanted to mention. Oh, I follow an IPM method of treatment for my bees. So I use, I think it's, what's it called? Like screen bottom boards, things like that, cultural methods, before I use any kind of organic chemical. So I try to have good genetics first off. So a queen that has genetics and has mated with drones that, can fight off the mites. That's the most important thing. And then after that, the cultural controls like the screen bottom board. And then, yeah, if I do get those high mite counts or they're above threshold, 2 or 3%, I treat with an organic chemical first. And then very rarely do I even have to use things like hard chemicals like Apivar. And if I know I'm continually treating a hive, or if I know I had to treat a hive with Apivar, which I hate, I know I need to requeen that hive. That hive cannot tolerate mites, and so I need to find a queen that is better. So just another reason why getting mite counts is so important. And what else? Yeah. So I think that's it, besides just mentioning, you know, if you're letting your hives go and you're just letting the mites fester in there, you're not being a good neighbor to other beekeepers in your area, because you're creating what some people call a mite bomb. And so if that colony is dwindling from mites and stronger colonies nearby start robbing it and going into the hive and getting honey and resources, they're going to pick up those mites and then carry them to other hives. So yeah, just be a good steward, be a good beekeeper, take care of your bees, and yeah, just be aware of other beekeepers around you. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, guys.